Good evening. This is The Rundown. I'm Julian Reed, sitting in this week for Clint Watson. Well, the world is calling him the comeback kid. Yes, we are talking about the American billionaire businessman Donald Trump, who was elected as president again, this time as the 47th president of the United States of America. Now, according to the Associated Press, Trump secured 295 electoral votes, defeating his opponent, Democratic candidate Vice President Kamala Harris, who had 226 votes. Now, the Associated Press online confirms that Vice President Harris has congratulated President-elect Trump on his election victory, while Trump's campaign says he has accepted President Biden's invitation to meet at the White House to discuss the presidential transition. No date's been announced yet, but Trump's team say it will take place very shortly. Hundreds of world leaders sending congratulations to the U.S. President-elect via social media, including our own Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip Davis, who underscored the existing working relationship between the Bahamas and the United States and expressed optimism about the future of the relationship between our two countries, with President Trump at the helm in the United States. And Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell echoes the Prime Minister's sentiments, saying he hopes the diplomatic relationship both countries share continues for years to come. Well, we have another hour-long discussion tonight of last night's U.S. elections. University of the Bahamas Executive Vice President Dr. Ian Strachan and Group CEO for Fidelity Bank and Trust International, Gowan Bow. We bet you it's going to be a really exciting discussion tonight as we take a look at what happened and what it will mean for the Bahamas. Stay with us. The Rundown continues right after the break.
That's the bear of the Bahamas. I like to go down. Oh yeah.
Hey y'all, what's up?
Hey, what's that?
What y'all getting?
Listen, I've been waiting to march down some lobster, yeah?
Hi, I'm Matthew. I will be you guys' waiter today. Can I take your order?
Oh, I've been jonesing for some grouper dread.
Y'all see this?
See, this ain't gonna work.
Where the fish gone, though?
But how, though?
Don't leave our children with no fish in their future. Protect our sea. Protect our way of life. Protect the Bahamas. To learn how you can help, find us on Facebook at Bahamas Protected. See the future.
Hardware is the helpful place. Everything you need under one roof, from electrical, paint, plumbing, outdoor, barbecue, automotive, lawn and garden, pet supply, houseware, and seasons. Hurricane season is now here, so for all your hurricane needs, we have a 25% off bargain zone.
Hey, thanks. I would have given more stuff, but I didn't bring my money. I thought this was a glove, and I thought everything was free. Finally know what it is now. Ace.
We're located on St. Albans Drive, West Bay Street, open Monday to Saturdays from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and closed for lunch 2 p.m. to 3 p.m.
Welcome back. Now, were you one of the Bahamians who stayed up all night last night just to watch the coverage of the U.S. elections? And at the end of it, were you related, or were you one of those who were just sucking their teeth with disgust? Anyway, we're going to talk about last night, and we're going to talk about the future. Here in their personal capacities, Gowan Bow and Dr. Ian Strachan. Welcome.
Well, I don't know. You may be, your friends are the ones who get you in trouble, right? We'll see.
Well, you know, I didn't even bother to stay up last night. I got up at 4 a.m. and I said, I don't know. There was some excitement for me in some lead up to the actual election, but last night it was just like even before the actual results were known, it was just like an anticlimax for me. How was it for both of you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the insertion of Kamala Harris instead of Biden definitely animated the race and got people hopeful and excited. But then the polls, after a time that plateaued and the polls just wouldn't move. And so those who were close observers would probably say, look, this is going to be a repeat of the last time, of 2016, and that's exactly what happened. I have to admit I allowed myself to hope that might not have been the case, but as the evening wore on, it became obvious that's what's going to happen for me. So,
yeah, the idea of possible change with a woman and a black and Asian woman leading the United States was probably just a little bit too optimistic. Huh?
Well, I think, what it was, the good side of it was we have our own national issues, and it was a distraction for most Bahamians, right? And I say that from the perspective that, and some positive elements. The Kamala Harris campaign raised a lot of money. When we think economically, that has a good impact for us because that money would have been spent. And there's an opportunity for that, for us to be the beneficiary, whether it's through tourism and other initiatives that we do with it. Bahamians, interestingly, have a very strong leaning towards Democrats, and we may not have a full appreciation why, but it's largely because their political philosophy is very much aligned with a lot of the Bahamians who went through majority rule. And so they see the benefit of, I'm going to say, the socialism. But the reality is the Bahamas has always done better under Republican governments because we are an open economy that is international financial center, and so therefore the capitalist philosophy is one that better aligns with us. So it was interesting. Let me put it that way.
I hope that's what it is, because if it is, that would make sense.
I mean, I don't disagree with Gavin, but I think there's also there's a sector of Bahamians who, because of their religious beliefs, because of identify with the Republican Party and its stance against abortion, against gay rights, etc. Right? So there are Bahamians rooting and who are happy for Trump.
No, there were a lot who were rooting for a lot of my friends I know.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other thing you said is that we were looking at Kamala for a chance at change, but I actually don't know that that's what. Clearly, that's not what the American public was thinking. They were thinking the change was we've had 4 years of Biden, and we want something else.
And
so,
they saw her just as a continuation of Biden.
Yeah, I don't think she could really separate herself from the administration she'd been a part of.
If we're candid, neither candidate during the process really articulated very well what their plans were. But I think she needed to do more of it just for what Ian said. Persons kind of said, I know what Trump is. Whether I like him, hate him, I know him. Kamala, the question was, and her whole campaign was very scripted, is the way I would describe it.
Yeah.
Meaning that there was very little impromptu interview or impromptu engagement. It was on the stage, it was with persons who were already sort of structured in how she would be asked questions, how she would answer questions. And the reality is, I think politics is still one where people have to relate to you.
That's a good observation. Right? And they were protecting her.
Exactly.
They were protecting her from herself.
And that's what I say.
And that when she went off the script, that she would she would do herself serious damage.
Now maybe that was a disservice to her because Joe Biden, came out of the race so late, and so she was never preparing herself for it. But that in and of itself is one that you have to be concerned with. If you are going to lead, you should always be preparing yourself to lead.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, obviously the Democrats usually have Hollywood and the media on their side for the most part, the vast majority.
Right.
And you think there's just this complete distrust of the media. And a lot of the work that Trump has done in sort of saying that the media is never fair to me, they've never done me correct.
It's fascinating. I mean, I think that Trump is actually anti-establishment. He is he's an anti-establishment conservative billionaire. So in the sense that he resonates with people in America who feel as if they are displaced and they are no longer at the center.
Outsiders?
Yes, even though they have privilege, white privilege, they're threatened by immigration. They're threatened by these laws that secularize America and that create a greater equality for people, that offends their religious beliefs and so on. And they also look skeptically at Washington, D.C., and so on. And so he takes advantage of that as this sort of strongman character, and you see that around the world too, resonating, right? So in India with Modi and.
But it's amazing that they were willing to actually sort of, turn a blind eye to all of the negativity about him, and there's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Some things.
But I think it goes back to the devil, right? So what he did very successfully was he never denied the negativity. He said that it was orchestrated.
Except for the Stormy Daniels thing.
But even if you think about the way he denied that, right? It was an aspect like, I wasn't aware of what was happening. He didn't say that the elements that led to it. He just said, I did not instruct that. But, and I just find with him, the one aspect that he, to the point that you mentioned, he looked for the fears, he accentuated the fears, and then said, I will be the one to, if you will, address it. And the media has done itself its own disservice, because sometimes it is biased. Sometimes when you look at what is presented on the media, it seems to be trying to persuade persons in a particular lifestyle or in a particular thought process, as opposed to simply being objective communication and allowing people to form their views. So when you feel like someone is kind of imposing their views on you, you naturally have a distrust. And he realized that there was far more of that, and particularly to his base, when, it was said that he did all of these negative things, he could say, well, this is a conspiracy, and he knew that would resonate.
And I think also too, when you look at Trump, you have to think about his predecessors. You should think about George W. Bush. You even think about like a weird guy named Ross Perot. You got to go back a long time.
Wow, that's going back.
There's a certain type of maverick, renegade type of personality, almost, yes, a little bit of a clown, of a buffoon type, where he's relatable. People can laugh at him. People can, when he mispronounces something or he says something that's not accurate, it humanizes him in a way. And then there's a certain large portion of the American population that likes that he doesn't come off as pretentious or overly intellectual or condescending, right? And so his flaws actually make him in a way appealing. And then his machismo, because if you look at the gender divide in the voting. And males voted more for Trump.
And so black men didn't vote for Kamala at all.
Exactly. So there's this part of this that's about high school educated versus college educated. It's about urban versus rural. It's about Christian versus non-Christian, but it's also this gender thing. So in a way, if you think about it, it's a patriarchal society, right? So Trump represents that. And so there's a lot of that's going to be forgiven. But we shouldn't think America is special in that way. Look at your own society.
So really, all the womanizing issues really just make people say, yeah, that's a real man.
Yes. I mean, it offends millions. Don't get me wrong. 67 million people voted for Kamala Harris. Let's not try to pretend like every American is okay with the things he's done.
No.
But clearly, there are enough people who don't care about that. They care more about the culture war. They care more about the values that he seems to want to represent. Doesn't matter, he put his name on the Bible, and try to commercialize that. They resonate with those messages and their lifestyle, and they think he stands for that.
I'm going to stop you right there, Ian. We're going to take a quick break, but we're continuing. Stay with us. Ian Strachan, Gowan Bowe. We're talking about the U.S. elections and President-elect Trump.
Our company offers a simple philosophy, open hands. What do open hands mean? If you keep your hands closed, nothing comes in, nothing goes out. If you keep your hands open, a lot of things comes in, a lot of things goes out. We cannot expect to be a successful company without blessing our community and blessing our country.
My good friend and valued client, Dominic Stirrup, approached me following a meeting we had and told me of the idea that he had of feeding 10,000 Bahamians on Thanksgiving.
There was a lot of details to put together, had to figure out how to get it done. But at the end, it was worth it. At the end, it gave me a heart of gratitude to know that our company is reaching out to so many persons.
We invite you on a journey to witness an extraordinary chapter in the story of the Bahamas Striping Group of Companies, a tale of compassion, unity, and the true spirit of Thanksgiving.
Got termites and need to get rid of them fast? Trust Rentokil Initial. With over 60 years experience in the Bahamas, the global brand, training, and expertise can't be beat. Only Rentokil Initial gives you a 3-year warranty and payment plan options on termite fumigation. No one can match the range of treatments we offer, such as fumigation, pre-construction treatments, termite monitoring, and more. No matter where you are in the Bahamas, we will come to you. When it comes to complete termite eradication, there's only one name, Rentokil Initial.
Continuing our talk with Ian Strachan and Garwin Bowe. And, of course, Trump is back, or will be back in the White House. I found it very interesting how the automatic switch from a really abrasive campaign on both sides, him and his VP, who said some really crazy things, to like, oh, it's just time for us to get together and unite. Yeah. Let's just be one.
Yeah.
Do you buy that?
No, I don't. I think it's commendable that they
said it.
Said it.
Yeah.
Right. It's the right thing to say, but I think there is a definite fascist streak in Trump, a dictator streak. So in consistent with that, you can look at it throughout the world. He has his own like mob, his own rabble rousers, his own Tonton Macoute, if you will, in the Proud Boys and others. And he's weaponized a lot of angry, disaffected white men, you know, with weapons in the past. And I wouldn't be surprised if things get tough during his tenure, if people start scoring major points against him and someone's really giving him body blows, he won't say something on Twitter or X or whatever it's called, and someone does something to intimidate or to try to, you know, to send a message. I don't think he's beyond that. If he can pull off January 6th, he can definitely mobilize that during these 4 years. We should expect it.
Is he going to have time to do that, though? Because he's going to have such a big agenda, not just national.
Well, his first agenda is making sure that everything that he's been charged with goes away.
Well, that's true.
The people who are his friends don't end up in jail. So that's true. Those are his priorities, right?
What about the ones he wants to send to jail?
And those who attacked him pay for it, right?
But I think, you know, I take I guess, a less cynical view in the sense that I think that the reality is the world as we know it today, with the information age, etc., mandates that certain things happen and are not carrying us back to what I'm going to call slavery or carrying us back to the overt oppression, right? So whether he's a unifier or not, I think is secondary. He has to give that impression, because I think he's smart enough to recognize he's not only president for his base, but to the point he will use his base to ensure that he is insulated and protected. But if he does things it's impossible for him to do things only for his base.
But Garwin, he has the Senate and the House now, doesn't he?
Well, the checks and balances, and that's the part that I think when we think about
and the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and that gives him unilateral authority, which is a dangerous.
You got to remember the people around him. Bannon, his boy, just got out of prison, and the first thing he told the media was, "Well, you thought it was divisive before. You're going to see divisive this time around." I mean, you know, some people.
I think a lot depends on the quality of the professionals in the government of the United States, in the Justice Department, in the Defense Department, in the military, in the FBI, etc.
If he keeps them and allows them to do their jobs.
That was a problem before. Remember how he behaved toward Fauci, who was trying to save lives, and he turned him into an enemy, right? So that's going to be key, those citizens being professionals and standing up for the integrity of their institutions, because he's going to test that.
I'm sure.
He did it before. There's no reason to believe he won't try to do it.
Yeah, he's not going to change.
Yeah,
you can't see it.
And that's why I said there's some positive and negatives that we have to look at. When we had presidents that did not have the Senate and the House, and they were divided, you found ineffectiveness because they just could not get anything done.
Right.
So there's an upside that says, okay, well, if you have the houses, then, okay, there's a possibility to get it done. Now, equally, if you have the wrong character who takes that to the state of authoritarianism and is really saying it's my way only and there's no checks and balances. It was interesting when they were talking about the Senate race and they were saying why the GOP wanted to have 52 because they have some within their ranks that they expect will depart from him, particularly even in the cabinet choices. So I think there's evidence that there are people who are willing, even within his party, to oppose. Now, they realize that has to be very strategic. You cannot simply oppose for opposing's sake, and you cannot not know who's behind you. So this is one of those that don't go where everyone rousing you up to say, let's go to fight, and then when you throw the first blow, no one behind you, right? So they're going to have to be careful. But I think, now he will not respond kindly to that. But the reality is, to the point that Ian made, I think America has to decide, are they truly the beacon that they wish to be for the rest of the world? Or are they going to, if you will, implode by virtue of seeing the other powerhouses that are emerging that do not have this sort of insurrection and this level of chaos, etc., and are they going to be willing to allow their internal fights to see, someone outside surpass them? And whilst it may be, I said I wasn't cynical at first. I am cynical to this point. I will say
come on around to my side. Come on over here. It's okay.
Money drives everything where the United States is concerned.
Yeah, and that's the interesting
thing. The reality is prosperity.
He was backed by several billionaires, including Elon Musk, who I understand maybe not a cabinet position, but definitely get a special advisory position. And then what's also interesting is that there were about 5 others who are billionaires, and all of them come from South Africa. I don't know what that means.
But you got a feeling. I think that, again, the Republicans have always been for smaller government, less regulation, less taxes. So that's, all of those things are music to Elon Musk's ears, right? The Democrats, particularly Biden, was very pro-union. All right, that's something that a lot of the billionaires, big corporate heads didn't like that at all. And so there are reasons you can find for why Musk actually flipped and became a Trump supporter, because he wasn't always a Trump supporter.
No, he wasn't, no.
So that's kind of what's going on there. So it's a real interesting amalgamation of reasons why people have backed Trump. And you talked about the emergence of those other nations to take dominance in the world. And you talk about China, and you talk about, obviously Russia's always been there. And so that's also part of why many Americans want a strong man leader, right?
I'm not going against you.
Yeah, so the appeal of Ronald Reagan and George Bush and now Trump is just that, right? So cowboy or in this case, fake pro wrestler.
Why grimace like that was because the little man from North Korea came to my mind. But that's his buddy too, right?
Yeah. So so that's interesting. I mean,
and that has implications for us here.
Exactly.
And sometimes Bahamians get too caught up in the reality TV component and not enough on, well, what are the real geopolitical issues? So let's talk about the China-U.S. trade war, geopolitical war, the ones that are there. I was taught by a mentor when I was coming up in the profession, said when 2 elephants fight, the only thing get trampled is the grass. And, you know, I say the Bahamas isn't even the grass, we the soil, right? So the reality is we have friendships with China and the United States.
Absolutely.
We've seen that tested when we talk about the UN Security Council and where they expect the vote to be in terms of certain, and don't believe it's one-sided. Both of those powerhouses exert their influence over our political leaders by saying, look at what I've done for you, and therefore I expect some compensation for certain things that are done. But we have, in very real terms, telecommunications. Trump arresting the Huawei executives, right? Created what became the immense standoff between them, because Huawei, for all intents and purposes, whilst it may be called a private enterprise, you know, certainly has very strong party ties. And so from that perspective, when you say, well, what would be the value proposition for our communications companies, Huawei may be the better position, but can we even consider them? And then when we look at the alternate and we say, well, okay, the United States doesn't want us to use certain vendors. And I use them only as one example. There are other Chinese vendors, because how many Bahamians do you know in their stores in terms of what they are acquiring, what they are purchasing and bringing? When you start to see the trade wars and you're now trying to put them on vessels that are registered in territories where the U.S. has influence, etc., is that going to impact our commerce, right? And so when we hear the statements by our government officials saying that we hope that things are not interrupted, we know that that's a little bit of a placating statement, because they know things will be interrupted. And we are not in a position to drive it otherwise. We have to be ready to kind of react to it. And sometimes it's a little bit of us being a bit bolder than we have been in the past and saying, well, you know, if you're asking us to pick between two friends, I know when I was a child, when you had to pick between two friends, it was which one had the best house, right? So which one offered you the most in terms of whether it was entertainment, whether it was
Atari games.
So if you're inviting, both of you have invited me into your home, then you know which one has Atari, which one has Nintendo, which one has a bigger yard, and
we've always been pragmatic about
but we have to be very. We have to be very discerning, because we are not making decisions any longer that have no consequence.
That's true.
When we make a decision, yes, even if it is just the slightest, you know, we have to be mindful of who do we offend and how do we really stay, you know, middle of the road, which is very, very difficult.
We've been quite good at doing that, though.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that there's, I mean, I think Chinese approach of soft power has allowed them to infiltrate all sorts of spaces in the developing world,
Caribbean,
and especially in the Caribbean, but also Africa, and that's happened. Americans have watched it happen, right? So the Chinese are prepared to spend money the Americans aren't prepared to spend in these territories, right? So it is going to be interesting. I can't do better than Gowan's analysis there of the implications in terms of the U.S.-China trade war. And I think the other element that we want to watch, of course, is how it affects the cost of living generally in terms of what happens to Russia and Ukraine conflict. Because obviously I don't expect things is going to be very good for the Ukrainians that Trump is president.
I don't think so.
Right, and I think that a lot of people who may have been angry with the U.S. government over its position with Israel will find that Trump is actually a fan of strongman Netanyahu.
Oh, yeah.
He's a fan of all strongmen, whether they lead democracies or not.
Netanyahu is getting worse and worse as each day turns.
Exactly. So he's pro-Israel. So so that's going to be interesting. So there's going to be a lot of dominoes falling, and it'll be interesting to see how we're a small place and how we're affected by all of these things. And whereas I agree, the Republicans, because of their tax views, that would benefit us because of the way we're organized. We'll wait to see how it affects us in other ways because of those conflicts on the other side of the Atlantic.
Gentlemen, we have to take another break. Stay with us. We'll be back with more right after this.
Beginning Monday, September 16th, it's the new lineup of ZNS News and Current Affairs, 6 p.m. It's What's Trending, Lifestyles in the Afternoon with Stacey Campbell Marshall, 6:30. We head to the north for the Bahamas Tonight Northern Edition, 7 p.m. It's the Bahamas Tonight National Report, followed by the Bahamas Tonight Access, now at 7:30. Then at 8 p.m., your nightly news analysis show, The Rundown, with Clint Watson, and 11 p.m., the Bahamas Tonight at 11 with Royston Jones. It's a full lineup of the new ZNS, and it starts Monday, September 16th. Only the sun covers the Bahamas better.
Clint Watson has been the trusted voice of journalism for over 2 decades. He is your first choice for hard-hitting discussions, your best choice for current affairs issues and investigative journalism. It's time to start the journey of relentless journalism. It's time to start the journey of facts over fiction. It's time for The Rundown with Clint Watson here on ZNS, where only the sun covers the Bahamas better.
Welcome back. Ian Strong, we'll continue with you because you were making a point just before the break.
So I was just thinking about all the different ways that this will play out in terms of geopolitics and the economics of it. We also have to think about climate. Prime Minister Brave Davis has been doing a superb job on the world stage.
On the world stage, yeah.
Very, very strong in terms of his messaging about climate impacts on developing countries, on countries that are most vulnerable, like us. The Republicans have not really been on that climate change bandwagon, and Glenn, you know, so how is that going to play out now? Now with Trump on the world stage, I'm kind of skeptical about climate justice really being something that we could benefit from over the next 4 years.
And America and China have always been the big ones that have
the violators.
Yeah. But I think you now start to see, so, you know, you could ask the question, like, what did Florida do? And it may have been the lead up into the elections. They started getting hit, right? And so, you know, the one thing I will say this much, Mother Nature is certainly far stronger than any strong man, right? And there are certain realities that when you see, even if you don't buy into the wider discussion, there are certain elements that you say, but there's been intensity. Even if you have some conspiracy theory that says this is man-made and is being driven, which we've heard
of course,
people saying. But equally, I think it's very important to understand what is going to be his policy position in terms of foreign policy position, because America is large enough to stand on its own, meaning that in most other territories, even the larger ones, they need support. Interestingly, when you said we talk about China and the U.S., who's the largest holder of U.S. debt?
Yeah,
it's China, right? So and this is why I say money or commerce and economics always has intertwined and is woven into the decisions that are being made. We just don't always see it very clearly. And you saw, you know, there was a period of time when a lot of the law firms were being taken over by China, meaning they were buying the equity interest in a lot of the U.S. law firms, etc. So there are a lot of what I'm going to say planted scenarios that already exist, and if we want to call them sleepers, etc. So, you know, I think it is easy, we always know it's easy in opposition to say the things you will do, and then when you come into power, the reality is set in. And we know that he's of an arrogant nature such that, you know, he will dismiss if it's still not his view. But equally to the professionals that you're speaking about that are saying that, look, you may be fine in your bubble and cocoon, but if you do these certain things, this is the impact it's going to even have to your base. So we have to think, you know, how are we going to make certain strategic decisions? The problem is if we listen, so we know, what was it, his manifesto 2025 or whatever it is, you know, had some very extreme views.
You're talking about Project 2025, which he has nothing to do with?
Well, you know, so I said manifesto. You said, you know, but what I mean is it had some very extreme, you know, I didn't read it, but I know.
I haven't read it.
I know the concepts that came out of it and emerged, right, which are very dangerous when you say that they're would be the removal of checks and balances. But if I go and use the tax, the inclusive framework, which is the OECD initiative around harmful tax practices, the United States has never bought into that, meaning under Republican administrations. The Bahamas' blacklisting commenced under Democrat governments, where they were basically saying that we want to collect all taxes of Americans wherever they are in the world, but the world started adopting that. And now I can tell you that, you know, if we went back 8 years, the change in government had a consequence where they're saying, I don't know if this will proceed, because if the United States is not on board, then we don't have sufficient, if you will, power to move it forward. Now the world has moved on. So whether the United States is a party to it or not, the remainder of the OECD is not going to back off this inclusive framework. And we've seen that we've not been, if you will, blacklisted by the United States in a very long period of time. But we see all of the European states that one did so as a bloc, and then now that the EU has removed this, we see individual states within Europe that have continued to do so. So we need to ask ourselves as an international financial center as well, what is our policy? And this is where I say we have to stop being reactive and be a bit more proactive. Even though he doesn't like taxes, is he going to remove corporate taxes and income tax? No, because that's a model that all he's going to do is create the exemptions and loopholes. But that policy is still going to be.
As a financier, we just passed the DMTT, the domestic tax, top-up tax bill.
Yeah.
Good thing, bad thing, what?
You know, and this is my personal view, is that I think when I look at the Bahamas' current tax system as a consumption-based tax system, I ask three questions. Is it equitable? The answer is no, because it's regressive. It has a greater burden on those who are behind us. Does it provide sufficient revenue for us to pay our bills?
No.
No, we've not had a fiscal surplus since independence. And then finally, does it allow us to compete on the world stage? And the answer to that is no, because we're continually blacklisted. So, you know, when they say, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, well, it broke, right? And it's very clearly broken, and so we have to fix it. So my personal view is, and one that I have no reservation in expressing in all of the political quarters, et cetera, is we need to move to a progressive system of taxation. I strongly believe, now I will be the first one to hold my hand up, economic philosophy is capitalism. That is me. I am. But I do have the moral standing to say that I am my brother's keeper. And so I believe that you render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. That I pay based on my capacity to pay, not based on my consumption, where the person who's earning less than me may consume not very much less, and they're paying a much higher proportion. And so my view is that we need to move to a progressive tax system, both for corporations and individuals, because, and even if you talk to the average man on the street, their reticence or their resistance is they see it as another tax being added. And the message that I am preaching is not that. It's a removal of our current system with a reform and replacement that says everyone will pay the same percentage, with those who are least among us having greater exemption on their income, and then we get those who have the capacity to pay more. Now, there are many in our own governments who don't hold that view, right? And even though they may not say it publicly, there are many who still hold the view, much like the capitalists in the United States that have a very strong view of the Adam Smith theory of free market economics, right? That let the strong survive and take out the weak, right? There's a very big faction that has that view. I think, you know, as society globally, we recognize the need to make sure that there's no man left behind, but there's a balance that has to be struck that says you do not discourage entrepreneurship by bleeding. One of our very successful entrepreneurs in this country once said something to me that has stuck with me. He said, Gowan, the day that I pay more to the government in taxes than I take home in profit is the day I give them the keys. And that was a very telling statement, because it wasn't saying that he was averse to paying taxes. He was saying that I've put my money up at risk.
Don't overtax me, yeah.
So if I'm put my money up at risk, if you're taking more from my business than I am earning, then that's a discouragement to investment. And that's the balance we have to strike.
It's interesting, you know, this whole issue is one of the ironies of Trump's success. because once he's evaded taxes. But beyond that, he doesn't want to pay, and neither does that 1% want to pay, not enough of them, their fair share. But they've been able to get the political support of the people who least benefit, from the system, who are at the bottom rung in terms of quality of education, quality of health care. All of those protections and benefits that come from a just taxation system, he doesn't really support. But he's been able to capture their imagination around ideology, around culture, around values, and get their eye off the ball of how they actually meet out in existence. Now there is one other part of it, and that is, of course, those areas of the American economy that have been phased out or have died because of changes. Those people feel lost completely, and he does resonate with them too. American jobs and all the rest of it. That does hit home that doesn't make sense to them economically.
That's why they want all the immigrants to stay away and go back home.
That's a part of it, yeah.
But just in channel, one of the Florida channels today, they're saying, yeah, if you send these people home, who's going to do all the agricultural work? It means that you're going to pay more in the food stores. Of course, yeah. And of course, if you've got to pay more there, we're going to pay more here.
Yeah.
But if you listen to, and this is one, not being a political strategist, but if you listen to the Democratic Party or the Democrat Party, they did not hear the cries of the persons that said they were worse off economically.
Yeah.
And they didn't respond to that. So interestingly enough, as you say, Trump's, okay, those of us who invest should not pay. But what he was also saying is, but I'm going to get those of you who are on the lower rungs more money.
Yeah.
Because if you allow me not to pay taxes, I am going to expand. I am going to invest. I am going to grow the economy. It is going to be so more opportunities. It's going to be so buoyant, right? That you will get. Now, he didn't make it clear that you will always be the worker. And your opportunity to become the entrepreneur, to become the owner, is going to still be marginalized. He didn't, make it that clear.
Right.
However, I think the big thing that he said was, I am going to grow the economy, and to the point that you made, I'm going to bring American jobs back.
Yeah.
I am going to effectively put so many tariffs on those that are imports that it will make it almost cost prohibitive for us to do certain things. So he spoke things that spoke to people's pockets. And I go back to what I say, everything comes down to economics for them, because he allowed them to at least have the sense that I will be better off. And the Democrats did not hear, and it was as an outsider, even traveling to the United States, when you spoke to individuals in the United States, you heard them saying that my cost of living, my discretionary income, I just do not feel better off. And so he was able to better talk to that than his opponent, who was really saying, well, he doesn't want to tax billionaires. Well, you know what? People were saying, I don't care who he taxes if it's better for me.
All right, well, listen, we're going to have to take a break there. But when we get back, let's take a look at if it really was better and if it was because of Trump when he was last in office. Stay with us. More to come after this.
That's the bear of the Bahamas. I like to go down. Oh yeah.
Agent, before we send you out in the world, we must make sure that your mission is intact. Yes, Mom! Agent 1, what is a touch? Physical contact, Mom. Agent 2, what is a good touch? Touches that make you feel alright, Mom. Such as a high five, a handshake, even a kiss, Mom. Good. Now, Agent 3, what is a bad touch? Touches that make you feel not so good, Mom. Like a slap, a kick, a pinch, and most important, if someone touches your private part. And what do we do when someone gives us a bad touch? You tell a trusted adult, Mom. For help, Mom. Tell them, don't do that, Mom. Agent, I see that you understand. Now it's your mission to spread this information. Just remember good touches are okay, and bad touches are not okay. So agent, go spread the word. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Dr. Gale, and I'm inviting you to be a part of a journey where we open the Word of God to receive strength, to receive empowerment from the Scriptures as they have been written. Get your Bibles, get your cup of coffee or your tea, because this journey is gonna be great. This is your day of victory.
Welcome back. It's our final segment. Time really flies when you're having fun. Garbo and Ian Strawn, all you hear now is saying, oh, they can't wait for Trump to fix it. He's going to fix everything. And he says he's going to fix everything. But what was it really like in his first term? The economy may have been good, but was it his efforts that really made it good?
You know, it's one of those, though, you ask the question, is it better to be good or to be lucky? Right? And so he was, you know, a beneficiary of the times. And the reality was that the U.S. economy, much like the rest of the global economy, had really been shook up so much in the 2008 Great Recession that it took an extended period of time for there to be the natural progression in terms of the incline. And so he came largely on the back of that. If we are objective in the ones there, Obama had a very difficult time. He was very personable, very charismatic, but in terms of policy position and getting the ability to get things through, he had a very difficult time. And so a lot of things that he conceptualized and set into motion, you know, we've had a former prime minister said, you know, some will sow and some will reap, right? And Trump simply was in the right position to be reaping some of the seeds that had been sown. So I think it's a little bit a difficult one to say, well, was it his policy or was it the times? And the reality is, do you need to separate them? Because, you know, the mark of a man is not where he stands in times of good, but when he stands in times of difficulty. And that's what people are now judging their political class on. That, don't tell me, you know, if you happen to be in the right place at the right time, then luck on you. If you're in the wrong place, there's no excuse anymore. It's saying, well, you said you were able to do so. And now, for him, to be perfectly honest, it's going to be seen whether or not he is the one who creates the economic boost, or really the last time he was just in the right place, because the economic environment in the United States is so complex, with high interest rates, still stubborn inflation that is being reduced, the whole geopolitical initiatives that are having them on the front line, these wars that we're talking about in commodities, and the black market that is emerging in terms of what's coming through. So, you know, exiting all immigrants is not going to be the answer when you need productivity.
Right? Yeah, and I agree with you. I think the Barack Obama bailouts, the banks, the housing market, the cars, the airlines, he had to bail out all of those, right? So the car industry, all the rest of it. So he definitely benefited from that. And I think, but we also have to give him some credit, because he's a businessman, and so was not a career politician before that. And so you can imagine he comes with some novel approaches. I think perhaps we benefited from that during the COVID fight, because of how he was open to doing things differently to get all of the talent and all of the industry working to find a solution. He doesn't get a lot of...
Although it came with some silliness.
Yeah, he was crazy with it, but he can't take credit for it. For producing a world's, you know, saving, you know, drug in record time.
Happen.
That happened under him.
It did happen,
You know, the bleach comments aside, right? So there's that. And then also, too, I think his approach to China was one that the Democrats, they didn't reverse it, right? So there's some ways that he did come with a out of left field kind of, we're going to do something different approach to things that was beneficial. So we'll see if he still has that in his pocket, if he can still pull that off. I think Biden takes a blow for things that he didn't start the Ukraine-Russian war, although he's been bankrolling that war. Biden has been, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think that's going to come to a close and Russians are going to get what they want.
I think so.
And so that, in that way, Trump will have a hand in changing what people are paying for at the pumps and all the rest
What's
of it.
also going to be interesting, too, is how he deals with NATO, because, you know, he's always been clashing.
Well, he's pretty much said he has no regard for it in the sense that it is a club and one that he's not a part of, right? So,
but he's paying for it.
Yeah,
that's his main problem.
That's what he said. Everyone better step up.
Yes, exactly.
The ones there, but it's one of again, it goes back to saying that. The reality is economic policies take a significant period of time in order to be felt. And so you're not actually abundantly clear as to whose policy is coming to fruition oftentimes. You know what the policy was that initiated certain elements, right? And so you can sort of draw correlation and say that I believe that these are the results. But, you know, it requires decision making. And the one thing you do give him is this. He will make a decision even if it's blatantly wrong, and he's then going. So his own is, look, it's better I make the wrong decision and then have a chance to start correcting it than to keep meandering along and not doing so. And I think that's
and the irony is, too, he probably will benefit from some of what Biden has done, investment in infrastructure. Once you get rid of the pressures on inflation, but you know that money is still being spent in all of these areas, he'll probably be the beneficiary of it.
And that is the irony. That the truth of the matter is, I think that when you look at what he's coming into now, the question that they have, and we face here in the Bahamas as well, is where is the next growth going to come from? So what are the industries? We saw the digital asset industry, you know, go through its crypto winter and have some very significant ones, because that was seen as a new, if you will, MAGA type initiative, right? That this was innovation at its height and its best, and so that is challenged. Their industrial sector is challenged, and so in terms of technology, even though they talk about the semiconductor, and we don't even think about these small little things, where they came from, and you know, to the point where they're saying Silicon Valley now, we can't rely on the import, right? But all of the countries are doing it. China is now saying, well, we can't import from certain parties, so we're going to start developing these as well.
That's why they want Taiwan too, because all of
the raw material. But it's one of saying that I think the one message I would say coming out of the United States election is Bahamians can no longer be asleep at the wheel. That we cannot bank on good fortune. We have to be a bit more proactive, or not a bit, we have to be far more proactive in terms of developing our strategy and then being strategists to understand the world around us and how that feeds into what we're doing. If we continue to sit back and just wait until the, if you will, scraps of the wider economy, global economy, fall to us, I think we are going to fall victim to much less success than we've had in the past. And so we need to look at this as an opportunity of saying, my grandfather said one thing that is very telling, and it was about our politics. And he made the example, and he used to be at the airport. He said, when Pinlan came off the plane, I kissed him. When Ingram came off the plane, I kissed him. When Christie came off the plane, I kissed him. And people say, well, what did kissing have to do with anything? He said, no matter who is there, we have to work with them. And he said, your political views are not going to put food on the table, right? And you can support who and what you wish, but you still need to be, you still have to do the job that you put there, and that's what we're hoping their professionals in the U.S. are saying, and ultimately whether they support him or not.
Well, you know, I think I invite the Bahamian people to reflect on the American election and where there are parallels in our own situation, and to ask ourselves, are we satisfied with the conversations we're having about our future? Because in many ways, I see the political groups here as ideologically mostly the same.
Exactly.
How do you really distinguish yourself one from another? And it's one thing, like Trump said, you're going to build a wall. It's one thing to say you're going to do something in these manifestos that you always say.
Yeah, but then you don't do it.
Then you don't do it, and you're surprised and shocked and heartbroken. You get voted out 5 years later, but you didn't do anything you promised you'd do. So I think the challenge really is for for the, because we're not that far away from that season ourselves.
Yep,
how are you distinguishing yourself one from another in terms of your philosophy, your policy, your action plan? Because you seem so much alike. You say all the same things. And then can you follow through on some of that? And that actually make a difference, because Bahamians are, it's hard.
Yeah.
Cost of living is hard, and we want to see...
They're saying the same things Americans
Of course they are.
Into this.
Exactly, so...
I'm not better off today.
Exactly, and so what are you doing what is your plan to actually alleviate this and create new jobs, and for my son to want to come back and work and live here and own a home? And
that's a whole other show we gotta
exactly
deal with. But sorry, I gotta ask this question. You gotta excuse me for being a bit crass, but I have to wonder, since it was such a big deal, at least on the Democratic side, well, on both sides really, but are American women's wombs cowering in fear right now?
Oh wow!
You know, they showed a statistic when they showed the results of Florida, right, which is frightening, having a daughter. And so I'm just going to take this from a personal standpoint. I, from a religious and God-fearing individual, don't believe that we have the unilateral right to decide who lives and dies. But there are certain circumstances where I think even the Lord himself would not. And a pastor once said to me, you know, when we look at the disciples who were physicians, right, if God didn't believe that medicine had a role to play, right, they would not be the ones around. And so I think that, you know, it is a bit frightening that we see the federal government probably being too intrusive in the decision-making of women. And so they showed where, you know, for a Florida woman, how far they would have to travel to find a state that would do so. And if you watch Trump, he was very crafty in it. He said, look, I didn't take away the state authority, you know. I just eliminated the Roe v. Wade and the federal authority. Now the states could leave it up to themselves. And, you know, the states are now starting to see what type of persons they have within the states. But I do believe, yes, there are women across America, but I think there was a big enough faction that said the way it was put was, and the way he did very, very, very skillfully was that they're just killing the babies, right? And when he said it that way, and when you have the Pope that said, well, look, you're picking between two evils when he described Trump, but then he also said you have, you know, a murder on the other side, not exact words, but basically saying supporting abortion when Catholicism doesn't. That is going to be a difficult one. And if you say to my daughter, you know, she's the victim of an attack, an abuse, or you have a medical condition, or you know that the child is going to suffer and probably not make it through the initial months, is that better?
I got to cut you off right there, because, Ian, we got 2 minutes left, and I want to hear more from you.
Yeah, no, I would just say I agree with everything that Gowan said, but I think also let's not forget that there's life in the womb, and then there's life out of the womb, and the Republicans don't want to protect those either, since they have no problem with, it seems, with little children being gunned down in primary school. And the Democrats are equally to blame. I mean, Congress and the Senate is not prepared to protect Americans from gun violence. It's that simple. PLP, sorry, Republican or Democrat, and that's a serious problem for me. And I don't expect any progress on that under Trump at all. He's not gonna mess with that at all. And that has implications for us, of course, because we have our own gun violence problems. Because we don't make guns, but they're in our country.
But they're here.
In our streets, and we're killing each other with them. Right? So.
Well, I guess all we're going to do is wait and see. He takes office in January 20th. Obviously, there should be no insurrections leading up to that. Gentlemen, always great to talk with you both. I'm Gowan Bowe, Ian Strawn.
Thank you so much.
I'm Julian Reed, and thank you for joining us.
At Centerville, I'm LaDawn Davis. This is ZMS.
Imagine a future where rising seas and extreme weather not only threaten our homes, but also drain our national economy. As climate change continues to impact the Bahamas, the financial costs are growing, from disaster recovery to sustainable infrastructure investments. This is Protecting Paradise, the Bahamas' fight against climate change. Join us as we explore the real price of climate change and the innovative solutions that could help protect our islands and our economy for generations to come. Keep watching. A brand new episode of You and Your Money starts now.
You and Your Money is brought to you by J.S. Johnson, Leno, and Easy Car Sales.
Welcome to You and Your Money, everyone. Joining us today to talk about rising tides, the impact of sea level rise on the Bahamas is Dr. Rihanna Neely Murphy from the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection. Dr. Rihanna Neely Murphy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, Dr. Rihanna, how has the rising sea levels already affected coastal communities in the Bahamas, and what are the projections for the coming decades?
So thank you. And again, it's a pleasure to be here. I would just like to say that the entire Bahamas is a coastal community. We have been designated, the entire 100,000 square miles of us, as coastal. So all 400,000 of us, based on the last census, are included in the coastal communities. And so this is having an impact on everybody in the Bahamas, from north to south, east to west. And we're seeing impacts with respect to the last 30 years, the last 10 years, the last 20 years on our coastlines, where if you walk along certain beaches, you would see that if there is a place that you used to be able to walk and it's dry, we've seen about 1 foot of sea level rise that we've experienced in the last 30 years. And we expect that if there is a business as usual, if nobody does anything to address the climate crisis, the climate change issue, that we could see up to 1 meter of sea level rise across the Bahamas.
Now, I know you said it affects the entire Bahamas. Now, what specific areas or islands in the Bahamas are most vulnerable to sea level rise, and what measures are being taken in order to protect these areas?
So we've seen some impacts in central and northern Bahamas. We've also seen some more different impacts in the southern Bahamas.